So Henry Cejudo wants to fight Alexander Volkanovski. That fight kind of interests me because Henry Cejudo is probably the greatest 135er bantamweight of all time. Bantamweight, actually, I take that back. I mean, he was originally a strawweight. That's where he won the title against Demetrius Johnson. He beat TJ Dillashaw at 135, and TJ Dillashaw was on all the steroids on the planet. And he was able to dismantle TJ Dillashaw in 30 seconds and win the title. He defended against Marlon Moraes. And he beat Dominic Cruz. Actually, I take that back. He is the greatest bantamweight of all time because he beat the greatest bantamweight of all time. He beat the greatest flyweight of all time, Demetrius Johnson. 11 title defenses. He destroyed Marlon Moraes. He destroyed TJ Dillashaw, Marlon Moraes, Demetrius Johnson, Dominic Cruz. I mean, come on. His accolades kind of speak for themselves, and that definitely allows him to just skip the line ahead of everybody and get a title fight against Alexander Volkanovski. Now, Volkanovski won the title against Max. He defended his title 2 times. Now, there's a case to be made that Volkanovski should defend his title against Giga Chikadze or the winner of Holloway versus Yair Rodriguez, which is a significant fight. So the question is from the fans and the public is, does Henry Cejudo deserve to overtake all of those other contenders that have been putting in the work as of late at featherweight? Does he deserve to just jump ahead of the queue and get the title shot? That's a tough sell. I mean, it's a tough sell because of the person Henry Cejudo is. Henry Cejudo, he did retire from the UFC, and that definitely made Dana White very, very angry because Dana hates it when people retire from the sport because that's putting money out of his pocket. That's taking money out of Dana's pocket because Henry Cejudo was definitely a decent draw, but at the same time, the fact that he's asking for all this money kind of, took him out of the driver's seat because when he retired, nobody cared. Nobody gave a shit when he retired. So given the fact that nobody gave a fuck that he retired, it's kind of, he's a draw in terms of who he faces. If he faces the top dog of the division, then yeah, he's going to sell tickets. But if he fights someone like Marlon Moraes, in the Marlon Moraes fight, he didn't really sell any tickets. In the other fight with, what's his name? TJ Dillashaw, that was a big fight because TJ has a big name and Henry Cejudo definitely has a decent name, not a huge name. But it takes 2 to tango. So in this fight with Volkanovski, I don't think that would be doing much bigger numbers than Max Holloway. I just don't see it. And the reason why Henry Cejudo quit from the sport was because of money. And he wanted more money from Dana, and Dana wasn't willing to give it to him, and then he just retired. So, yeah, Dana calls all the shots, man. That's the problem with having a fucking monopoly on the sport. It's like you're an owner, you're the business owner, but at the same time, like you call all the shots. Well, doesn't it work like that with every business though? Because when you're a worker bee, you don't get to call any shots. You just get fired if you do anything. If you do one thing wrong in that company, you get fired straight away. So it's the same everywhere, really. There's really no difference anywhere else. Working your job as a cleaner, you'll get fired if you don't clean this room very well. But man, I would love to see that fight with Henry Cejudo. And just thinking about his accolades, I think that would definitely enable that should enable him to just skip the queue, because he defended his title so many times. No, he didn't. He defended it a couple times at bantamweight and a couple times at flyweight. He never defended it so many times, but he was a 2-weight world champion and he's an Olympic gold medalist. So that definitely kind of speaks for itself and definitely shows that he's a better contender than Giga Chikadze or Max Holloway, because Max has already got the title shot. No, he was defending his title and he lost the title to Alexander Volkanovski. Then Volkanovski rematched him and he lost his title. Maximum, no, he didn't lose his title. He defended his title again. But Holloway got robbed in the second fight. That's what most people say. Most people, all the fans say that Holloway got robbed in the second fight. And then he fought fucking Brian Ortega in the Fight of the Year candidate. Probably one of the greatest featherweight fights of all time, in my opinion. Because of the grit and determination that both fighters showed in that fight. Definitely kind of, puts it in the driver's seat for the best fight of all time. MMA fight of all time. People say Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. That fight didn't really show all aspects of MMA, in my opinion. So the jiu-jitsu wasn't really there. The wrestling wasn't there. It was a straight-up kickboxing match. So I don't think this is the greatest MMA fight of all time. I think Volkanovski and Brian Ortega is the greatest featherweight fight of all time. But does Henry Cejudo be able to beat Volkanovski? Like, Volkanovski has a world-class striking game. His wrestling is good too. So how is Henry Cejudo going to take him down? But Henry Cejudo is an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling, freestyle wrestling. He can take anybody down, dude. He's one of the best at wrestling. He can take anybody down. So with those credentials alone, I mean, it's a tough fight. It's a close. I mean, I don't know who wins the fight. I think he matches up very well with Volkanovski. I think it's a fun fight. I think it's a great fight, really. I think it should happen. But will it happen, though? Because when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, Henry Cejudo retired from the sport, and Dana wasn't too happy about that. And Dana calls all the shots. So, I don't know if that fight happens, man. I just don't know if that fight makes does it make sense money-wise? I mean, does that fight make sense money-wise? Does it? Does it make sense monetarily? Because that's all that matters to Dana White. Does that fight make sense money-wise, though? Does it sell a lot of pay-per-views? And is there enough interest from the fans? Really, it's up to us if Henry Cejudo is going to fight Alexander Volkanovski. Everybody loves to write off the fans. Us, we're the people that are going to be watching these fights. So we are the ones that can actually decide who gets the next title shot. If enough fans hammer Dana White every day for that fight, DM Dana White, DM him thousands of times. DM Henry Cejudo, and DM Hunter, and DM Dana White as well. DM Hunter Avalon, DM the other guy, the matchmakers, Sean Shelby. DM all of them. Keep on their tail. Keep the heat on them, and say we want to see that fight, Henry Cejudo versus Alexander Volkanovski. And I guarantee you, Dana makes that fight because Dana cares about how much money it's gonna. Bro, Dana's gonna make that fight. If there's enough people that want that fight to happen, then Dana White's gonna make that fight happen because all he sees is dollar signs. His eyes light up with dollar signs every time he hears about how much money he can make. So I think he'll make that fight. I don't think Dana's a bad person in retrospect. I think he'll make the fight. He'll make it. He's the promoter. He's gonna make the fight. The fans called for Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman too, and he made the fight. So, I don't think he's... But at the same time, does it make sense for him to jump the line after a couple of years out the game? I don't know, man. That's a tough question. I think he does deserve it, but does he deserve it in terms of in Dana's eyes? I think he deserves it. I think the fight should be made right now, but does Dana think what I think? That's the question.